In this video, we are going to create entity class. In previous video, you have seen we have created a REST app or project. Now let's continue and create an entity class. As you know, go to your source main. Here in your source folder, we are going to create first an entity class. Let's create a package, our own package. I'm going to have all the entities in my entity package. As you can have more than one entity class, I'm going to use a product class for my entity. Entity is nothing but a module which will have the data. As you know, I'm going to create the fields of my product class. I'm going to have ID for product ID and the product name as well as the price in double. Price in double. Now the second step is to create the getters and setters for your entity class. Select all and then generate. And the last step is to generate the toString method after price. No, I want after set price. Last, generate, Control Shift F to format, and then you can see the override method. Save your entity class. Now let's mark my product class using entity notation. This will tell the ORM that we need the product table and an @ID for the primary key of a table. I'm going to show you how to create a table, or we can also let Spring Boot create the table, but for simplicity we are going to create a table in MySQL. My root is my password. As you can see, I'm going to create a REST DB schema. Okay, here it is, my REST DB. As you can see, there are no tables here. As you can see, let me right click, create table. My table name will be my entity name, that is product, and the column which we have given in a code, for example ID, it's ID, int, and name of the product and the price of the product. I hope you know how to create a table in MySQL Workbench. It will be in double. If you don't know, you can check my previous lecture on JDBC template or ORM. So here we have created a table of product, as you can see. So let's start. Let's go to Eclipse. Here the next step is to create the repositories. So new, we are going to have an interface which will have all the default methods for creating a CRUD application. So here I'm going to create the package for repositories, and then I'm going to give the name of product repo, entity name plus the repository, repository. That will extend an interface. Click here, add JPA repository. We need an interface JPA repository of Spring. This contains all the CRUD repository methods. So here the type is the entity name product, and the ID is the ID which we have used as int. Here we are going to use integer wrapper class, as you know, for generics. Primitives are not allowed. So save, and then close. We don't need this. Now the next step is to create a class. I'm going to have a package of controller. It will be controllers, and then this will be my REST controller, product controller. You can have any name for your class, but you can use an entity name. This is our product controllers. You have to mark this controller as REST controller notation, and then you have to give the request mapping. Here I'm going to use /product. This will contain all the products. This will be my URL like I have shown you in my slide. Then I'm going to create a instance variable product of an interface product repository. As you know, we cannot create object of an interface. We are going to mark this with a notation auto-wired @auto-wired. Spring Boot will inject the object which is needed for product repository. Now let's create a first create method which will return or create a product which will not return, it will return in a JavaScript notation, JSON. So I have to pass an object at request body. Request body is to get the data from the JSON object which we are going to pass using Postman. So request body, we need to pass a product p reference which will have the product object. We have to import the request body. Oops, sorry, I have used the response body. Sorry, it's request body. Okay, let me just, it's perfect now. Then we have to return. We are going to use a return repo dot save the entity. P is my entity. Actually, we have to return this repo because we are returning product. So let me just write the return keyword here, format a code, and then we need to mark this method for post mapping. As you know, post creates. So save your controllers. Here you have seen how to create a post mapping. This will create an object in your REST DB. So the next step is to create application.properties. In this file we will have all the connections which are required for connecting to a MySQL database. So let's complete this in this part 1 lecture. In the next lecture I'm going to show you the execution of this project. So spring.jpa.hibernate.dtl auto, you know that what update does, it will not create a table again and again. It is just going to reuse the table or update it. The second is the data source. We have to also pass the URL. Note here, I'm not going to use a Hibernate dialog URL, the same URL which we are using in JDBC and ORM. So JDBC MySQL localhost port number. Okay, sorry. You know the port number, what is your default port number, and then the schema or database which we have created, REST API, as you know this. And the second step, let's copy, paste it, then the username. As you know that my user is root, you can give your own username and then the password. My password is same as my username. spring.gpa. Let's select the properties. Hibernate. As you know this, Hibernate properties are needed. Format, just to show you the SQL. Format SQL will give you the SQL query.